The Empire had conquered 1,200 star systems. They were tall creatures with hard shells covering their bodies like natural armor. Their eyes glowed yellow in the darkness of space, and their ships were massive things of metal and death. For 300 years, they had spread across the galaxy like a disease. Every species they found either bowed to them or died. They had never failed, not once. When their long-range sensors detected simple radio waves coming from a small yellow star, they felt nothing but hunger. Another planet, another species to crush, another world to add to their collection. The year was 2157 on Earth. Humans had finally stopped fighting each other. It had taken them thousands of years, 3 near-extinction events, and billions of deaths to learn that lesson. The resource wars had killed millions. The climate exodus had forced entire nations to move. The unification conflicts had nearly ended everything. But humanity survived. They always survived. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the orbital station called Sentinel. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war. He had fought in the last of the unification conflicts when he was young. He had watched cities burn. He had buried friends. And he had promised himself that humanity would never be caught weak again. The message from the arrived at exactly 3:47 a.m., Earth Standard Time. Primitive species of the third planet, the transmission began. You are now subjects of the Empire. You will surrender your world, your resources, and 10% of your population for labor assignments. In return, you will receive the protection of the Empire. Resistance is not advised. You have 1 rotation of your planet to respond. Listen to the message 3 times. He did not feel fear. He felt something cold and sharp inside his chest. It was the same feeling he had when enemy soldiers had surrounded his unit 30 years ago. Back then, he had found a way out. He always found a way out. Doctor arrived within the hour. She was the chief, a woman who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. While other scientists searched for friendly aliens, had studied what might happen if the aliens were not friendly at all. She was small, quiet, and had a mind like a weapon. "What do we know about them?" asked. Pulled up the data on the main screen. They call themselves the 8 feet tall, natural armor. They have been conquering other species for at least 3 centuries. They have never lost a war. Their technology is about 300 years ahead of ours. 300 years, repeated. That is a big gap. Yes, said, but I found something interesting. They always win because no one ever fights back. Every species they have encountered has either surrendered or been too weak to resist. They have never faced a real war. Thought about that. Humans had been fighting wars since they first picked up rocks and sticks. They had developed weapons that could destroy entire cities. They had created poisons that could kill millions. They had split the atom and used it to end the greatest war in their history. War was ugly and terrible, but humanity understood it in ways these aliens never could. They think we are primitive, said slowly. They detected our radio waves from 100 years ago, confirmed. They think we are still at that level. They have no idea what we have built since then. The truth was that humanity had changed greatly in the last century. After finally achieving global unity, they had turned their intelligence towards survival. Secret programs had developed weapons that the public never knew about. Defense platforms orbited Earth, hidden among satellites. A fleet of 200 warships waited in the darkness near Jupiter, ready for a threat that many had prayed would never come. The threat was here now. Captain Minyu Lee received the alert on his ship, the Resolve. He was 35 years old, one of the best pilots in the defense fleet. He had trained for alien contact since he was 18. Every simulation, every drill, every sleepless night had led to this moment. "All ships, this is Sentinel Command," the message said. "We have first contact. Stand by for orders." Minyu looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had never seen real combat, but they had trained harder than any soldiers in human history. They were ready. On Sentinel Station, intelligence officer was already working. She was 28 years old and had a gift for finding patterns that others missed. Within minutes of receiving the transmission, she had begun analyzing their communication frequencies, their encryption methods, and their language structure. "They are arrogant," she reported to Admiral. "Their encryption is basic. They do not expect anyone to break it because no one ever has. I can read their internal communications within a day." "Do it," ordered. The scout ship moved closer to Earth. Its commander was called and he was bored. This was his 20th conquest mission and they were all the same. The primitives would panic, their leaders would beg, and then the Empire would take what it wanted. He had already planned his celebration dinner. His sensors detected the orbital stations around the third planet. Primitive defense platforms, he assumed. Nothing that could threaten a ship. He broadcast another message, more forceful this time. "You have not responded to our generous offer. This is your final chance. Surrender now or face the consequences." Admiral sat in his command chair. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Earth's fate rested on what he decided in the next few seconds. He thought about the billions of people below, going about their lives, unaware of what was happening above them. He thought about his granddaughter, who was only 7 years old. He opened the communication channel. "Alien vessel," said, his voice calm and steady. "Leave now, this is your only warning." Heard the message and laughed. It was a wet, gurgling sound. In all his years, no species had ever spoken to this way. The primitive was either stupid or insane. Either way, it was amusing. "You dare threaten the Empire," responded. "You do not understand what you are facing. We have destroyed civilizations far greater than yours." "I understand perfectly," replied. "You are bullies. You attack the weak because you have never met the strong. But I am telling you now clearly and simply, you will not take this world. You will not take our people, and if you come any closer, you will die." Ordered his ship to advance. He wanted to see the fear in the humans' eyes when he demonstrated the power of the Empire. His ship crossed the asteroid belt. The defense platform fired. It was a weapon unlike anything they had encountered. The beam did not strike the shields. It passed through them as if they did not exist. One moment the scout ship was there. The next moment it was expanding dust and fragments. Had exactly 0.3 seconds to feel surprise before he ceased to exist. One escape pod launched before the ship was destroyed. A single survivor drifted in the darkness, his mind broken by what he had witnessed. He activated his emergency beacon and waited for rescue. On Sentinel Station, the officers erupted in cheers. They had done it. They had destroyed an alien warship. Admiral did not cheer. He knew this was only the beginning. "That pod," he said, pointing to the sensor display. "Let it go. Let them report back to their empire. Let them tell their masters what happened here today." Understood immediately. "You want them to know." "Yes," said. "I want them to know that we are not afraid. I want them to know that we will fight. And I want them to understand, finally, that the galaxy is not theirs to take anymore." The escape pod drifted toward space, carrying with it a story that would shake an empire. Earth had issued its first warning. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity always kept its promises. Emperor had ruled the empire for 200 years. He was ancient by any standard, kept alive by machines and the stolen life force of conquered species. His throne room was a monument to his power. The walls were decorated with the bones of leaders who had dared to resist him. The floor was made from the compressed remains of entire civilizations. He had not felt fear in over a century. He had forgotten what it was like. When the survivor from the scout ship was brought before him, expected a simple report. Another world ready for harvest. Another species too weak to matter. Instead, the survivor fell to his knees and could not stop shaking. "What happened?" demanded. The survivor tried to speak, but the words came out broken and confused. They destroyed Commander, one shot. Our shields did nothing. Nothing. Leaned forward on his throne. That is impossible. No primitive species has weapons that can penetrate shields. I saw it, my emperor. The beam went through the shields like they were not there. The ship was gone in less than a second. Did not even have time to scream. The court fell silent. The generals and advisors looked at each other with uncertain eyes. This was not supposed to happen. They were the supreme power in the galaxy. They did not lose ships to primitive species. Considered the report. He was old, but he was not stupid. He had built his empire by understanding his enemies better than they understood themselves. But these humans were something new, something unexpected. "Tell me everything about these creatures," he commanded. His advisors scrambled to gather information. They pulled data from the scout ship's records, from intercepted human broadcasts, from everything they could find. What they discovered was troubling. These humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. Their planet was covered with the scars of ancient wars. They had developed weapons specifically designed to kill other humans: nuclear bombs, chemical weapons, biological agents, things that no peaceful species would ever create. "They are violent by nature," one advisor noted. "They have been at war with themselves for thousands of years." "That should make them weak," another said. "Species that fight themselves usually destroy themselves." "But they did not destroy themselves," observed quietly. "They survived, and now they build weapons to destroy us." He made his decision. The Third Armada would be sent to Earth. 40 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. It was excessive force for a single world, but wanted to send a message. The humans had killed one of his commanders. They would pay with their entire species. Envoy was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission. He was a skilled negotiator who had convinced dozens of species to surrender without a fight. His job was to give the humans one final chance. If they refused, the Armada would turn their world to ash. On Earth, the celebration was short. Admiral allowed his crew exactly 1 hour to enjoy their victory before calling them back to work. "They will send more ships," he told his officers. "Many more. We need to be ready." Captain Minyu Lee ran combat drills with the defense fleet every day. The ships were smaller than vessels, but they were fast and deadly. Human engineers had designed them not for display, but for survival. Every system had backups. Every weapon was tested thousands of times. Every pilot was trained until they could fly in their sleep. Intelligence division worked around the clock. She had broken the encryption within hours, just as she had promised. Now she listened to their communications, mapping their fleet movements and studying their tactics. "They fight the same way every time," she reported too. "They form a standard formation and overwhelm their enemies with superior numbers and firepower. They do not adapt because they have never needed to. That is their weakness," said. "They are predictable." Doctor studied the biological data recovered from the destroyed scout ship. She discovered something fascinating. The officers were connected to their ships through neural links. It made them faster and more efficient, but it also created a vulnerability. "If we disrupt the neural link, the feedback could kill them," she explained. "Their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness." The preparations continued for weeks. Earth's population was not told about the alien threat. The World Council had decided that panic would help no one. Instead, the people went about their normal lives while their defenders prepared for war in secret. When the Third Armada entered the solar system, was ready. Envoy arrived first, his diplomatic ship broadcasting signals of peaceful intent. He requested a meeting with Earth's leaders to discuss terms of cooperation. Agreed to meet him, not because he expected anything useful, but because he wanted to understand his enemy better. The meeting took place on Sentinel Station. Was surprised by the simplicity of the conference room. No decorations, no displays of wealth or power, just a table and chairs. He found it unsettling. Admiral and Doctor were waiting for him. They did not bow or show any signs of submission. They simply sat and waited. "I am envoy of the Empire," he announced. "I come to offer you one final chance to avoid destruction." "We destroyed your scout ship," replied calmly, "and you think we need to avoid destruction?" Smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "That was a single ship. The Third Armada now waits at the edge of your system. 40 warships. Each one could reduce your planet to rubble. You cannot defeat such force." Leaned forward. "Your species has conquered 1,200 worlds, but you have never truly fought a war. You have only bullied weaker species into submission. That is not the same thing." Was taken aback by her words. No conquered species had ever spoken to him this way. "You are brave for someone facing extinction." "We have faced extinction before," said. "Many times, by our own hands. We nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. We nearly killed our planet with pollution. We nearly tore ourselves apart with endless wars, but we survived. Every single time we survived. Do you know why?" Did not answer. "Because we are stubborn," continued. "Because we refuse to give up. Because when something tries to kill us, we find a way to kill it first. Your empire has never faced a species like us. You have conquered the gentle and the weak, but humanity is neither gentle nor weak." Transmitted a private message to Emperor. "These creatures are not afraid. Something is wrong. I recommend caution." Ignored the warning. He ordered the Armada to prepare for attack. On Sentinel Station, intercepted the order. She reported to immediately. "They are coming. 40 ships approaching in standard formation." Stood up from the table. "Thank you for the conversation, Envoy. You may return to your fleet. Tell your Emperor that we will not surrender. Not today, not ever." Hesitated. "You are making a terrible mistake. The Empire will crush you." "Perhaps," acknowledged. "But we will make you bleed for every inch. And when your soldiers return home with stories of what happened here, your empire will never feel safe again. That is the human way. We do not go quietly." Returned to his ship with a cold feeling in his chest. He had negotiated with hundreds of species. He knew when someone was bluffing. Admiral was not bluffing. The Third Armada moved into attack position. 40 massive warships bristling with weapons ready to destroy a world. Their commanders were confident. This would be a quick victory, they thought. The humans were brave but foolish. Near Saturn's moon Titan, the human fleet waited in the shadows. 200 ships hidden among the ice and rock. Captain Minuli sat in his command chair, watching the sensor displays. "All units, this is Admiral," the communication channel crackled. "They think we are primitive. They think we are weak. Today we show them the truth. Today we teach them what it means to fight humanity. All ships prepare to engage." Minyu gripped the controls of the Resolve. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. He had trained his entire life for this moment. "For Earth," he whispered. The human fleet emerged from behind Titan, their engines blazing like stars. 200 ships against 40. The numbers seemed hopeless. But numbers were not everything. Humanity had spent thousands of years learning that lesson. The Battle of Titan was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The commander of the Third Armada was called. He had served the Empire for 80 years and had conquered 11 worlds personally. He had never lost a battle. He had never even come close to losing a battle. When the human fleet emerged from behind Titan, he felt amused. 200 small ships against 40 warships. The numbers meant nothing. His ships were larger, stronger, and more advanced. The humans were insects flying toward a fire. "Open a channel," ordered. "I want these creatures to hear their doom." His communication officer obeyed. His voice boomed across space, reaching every human ship. "Primitive beings of Earth, you have chosen death. Watch now as we demonstrate the true power of the Empire. Your resistance is meaningless. Your weapons are toys. Your lives are already over. Captain Minuli heard the message on the bridge of the Resolve. He smiled. The enemy was arrogant. Arrogance made people stupid. All units, Minu replied on the fleet channel. This is Captain Lee. They think we are weak. They think we will break, but they do not know who we are. They do not know what we have survived. Today we show them. Engage Protocol. Protocol was named after a Korean island famous for a natural phenomenon where the sea parted between two land masses. It was a symbol of finding paths where none seemed to exist. The protocol itself was a complete departure from traditional space combat. The human ships did not charge forward in a line. They scattered like a flock of birds startled by a predator. They moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were perfectly coordinated. Each ship knew exactly where every other ship would be at any moment. Frowned, this was not how battles worked. Enemies always formed lines and charged. That was how war had been fought for centuries. What were these humans doing? Fire at will, he commanded. The ships unleashed their weapons. Massive energy beams sliced through space, powerful enough to destroy moons. But the human ships were not where the beams expected them to be. They twisted and turned, dodging fire with impossible precision. On the Resolve, Minu pulled his ship through a tight spin, avoiding a beam that would have vaporized him. His heart was racing, but his training took over. Every movement was calculated. Every dodge was practiced. Target their communication arrays first, he ordered his weapons officer. Blind them. The human ships began their counterattack. Their weapons were smaller than cannons, but they were precise, surgically precise. Instead of trying to overpower the enemy shields, they targeted specific points: communication dishes, sensor clusters, engine vents. Within minutes, 5 ships lost their ability to communicate with the fleet. They were isolated, confused, and vulnerable. Watched his tactical display with growing concern. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before. They were not trying to destroy his ships. They were taking them apart piece by piece. Tighten formation, he ordered. Concentrate fire on their lead ship. But there was no lead ship. The human fleet had no center. Every ship operated independently while coordinating perfectly with the others. It was like fighting smoke. Had designed this strategy. She had studied battle records for months, looking for patterns. She found that they always focused on enemy command ships. Kill the leader, and the rest would fall apart. So the human fleet had no leader to kill. Every captain was trained to think and act independently. They cannot find our command structure because we do not have one, she had explained during the planning sessions. They will waste time looking for something that does not exist. The battle continued. Human ships swarmed around the warships like angry bees attacking bears. They struck and retreated, struck and retreated. Each attack was small, but the damage accumulated. Doctor's research paid off in the most devastating way. She had discovered that disrupting the neural links between officers and their ships would cause lethal feedback. Human engineers had developed a weapon specifically designed to do this. A narrow beam that would pass through shields and scramble neural connections. When the first ship lost its command crew to the neural weapon, the battle changed completely. The ship did not explode. It simply stopped. The crew fell unconscious or died at their stations. The vessel drifted, helpless, a massive metal corpse floating in space. Received reports of the incident and felt something he had not felt in decades: fear. What weapon is this? He demanded. How did they bypass our shields? No one could answer him. The humans had developed technology they did not understand. This was not supposed to be possible. The Empire was supposed to be 300 years more advanced. But advancement meant nothing against creativity. They had been advanced for so long that they had stopped innovating. They used the same weapons, the same tactics, the same strategies for centuries. Why change what worked? Humanity had never had that luxury. They had always been fighting, always adapting, always finding new ways to kill each other. It was their greatest shame and their greatest strength. The battle lasted 3 hours. By the end, 32 ships were destroyed. 8 more were captured. Their crews were taken prisoner by human boarding parties. Not a single human vessel was lost. The Resolve led the final assault on its flagship. Minyu brought his ship so close that he could see the enemy bridge through the viewports. He could see standing there, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. "Surrender," Minyu broadcast to the enemy ship. "You have lost. There is no shame in accepting defeat." Considered his options. He could self-destruct his ship, taking as many humans as possible with him. It was the honorable way. But as he looked at the wreckage of his fleet, at the impossible defeat he had just suffered, he realized something important. These humans were different. If he destroyed himself, they would still win. And he wanted to live. He wanted to understand how this had happened. "I surrender," he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. The survivors were taken to a detention facility on Earth's moon. They expected torture. They expected execution. They expected to be made examples of. Instead, they were given medical treatment. They were fed. They were housed in clean, warm cells. Guards spoke to them politely and answered their questions honestly. "Did not understand. Why do you treat us this way?" he asked his human guard. "We came to enslave your people. We would have killed millions." The guard, a young woman named Sara, shrugged. "You are prisoners now. That means you are our responsibility. We do not torture prisoners. We do not kill people who have surrendered. That is not who we are." "But we are your enemies," insisted. "You were our enemies," Sara corrected. "Now you are just people who need food and shelter. Maybe one day you will be our friends. We will see." Lay awake that night, thinking about everything he had seen. The conquered species because they believed they were superior. They ruled through fear and force. But these humans had defeated a superior force and then treated their enemies with kindness. It made no sense, and yet somehow it was more frightening than cruelty would have been. Admiral recorded a message and broadcast it toward space. His voice was calm but firm. "To the Empire, your third armada has been destroyed. We have captured your commander and his officers. They are being treated well. We have no interest in your territory. We do not want your worlds or your resources. We simply want to be left alone. But if you send more ships, we will destroy them. If you threaten our planet again, we will not stop at defense. We will follow you home. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Consider carefully before you act." The Emperor received the message. His advisors expected him to rage. They expected him to order the Grand Fleet to obliterate Earth. Instead, he sat quietly on his throne of bones and said nothing for a very long time. The humans had not just defeated his armada. They had shown mercy to his soldiers. And somehow, that was the most terrifying thing of all. The galaxy was changing, and the Empire was no longer certain of its place in it. Emperor spent 3 days in silence after receiving news of the Third Armada's destruction. His advisors were afraid to approach him. They had seen him execute officers for much smaller failures. But this was different. This was not a failure by a single commander. This was a failure of everything the Empire believed about itself. On the 4th day, made his decision. He would send the Imperial Grand Fleet, 300 warships, the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. He would not underestimate the humans again. He would crush them with overwhelming power. "Gather every ship," he ordered, "every weapon, every soldier. We will burn that world until nothing remains. We will scatter their atoms across the universe as a warning to any species that dares to resist us." The Grand Fleet assembled over the course of 2 weeks. It was a terrifying sight. 300 massive warships, each one larger than a city. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand anything known to exist. Surely, no primitive species could stand against such force. But as the fleet prepared to depart, something strange happened. Human ships appeared. Not attacking, just watching. They showed up at supply depots, at refueling stations, at the coordinates the fleet planned to use for faster-than-light jumps. They did not fire. They did not communicate. They simply appeared, observed, and disappeared. Had calculated this travel routes based on their fleet movements and standard procedures. Human ships were positioned along the entire journey, watching and waiting. The first message appeared carved into an asteroid near a supply station. The words were in perfect script, "Turn back." The second message was broadcast on military frequencies. It was a recording of the Battle of Titan. The humans had captured every moment of the destruction. They played it on loop, showing ships exploding, drifting dead in space, surrendering in defeat. The third message was more personal. It appeared on the private communication device of every single officer in the Grand Fleet. It said simply, "We know where you live." Fear began to spread through the crews. The Empire had always conquered through fear. They had never been on the receiving end of it. Now they understood what their victims had felt for centuries. It was not pleasant. Doctor had designed the psychological campaign. She understood that the respected strength, but they had never truly experienced terror. They had never faced an enemy that could reach them anywhere, that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Fear is a weapon, she had explained to Admiral. Sometimes it is more powerful than any bomb. If we can make them afraid, truly afraid, they may break before the battle even begins. Rumors spread through the Grand Fleet. The humans were demons from another dimension. The humans could not be killed. The humans had weapons that could destroy stars. None of it was true, but fear did not need truth. Fear only needed doubt. When the Grand Fleet finally arrived at Earth's outer solar system, they found something that made them stop completely. The humans had built a barrier. It was a network of stations and satellites spanning millions of kilometers. Energy crackled between the structures, forming a web of power that the sensors could not analyze. The barrier glowed with strange light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Admiral watched from Sentinel Station as the enemy fleet arrived. 300 ships. It was an overwhelming force, but he had expected this. He had planned for this. "Captain Lee," he called over the communication channel, "welcome our guests." Captain Minyu Lee led a small squadron forward, stopping just outside the barrier. He broadcast a message to the fleet. "Welcome to the Sol system. You may test our defenses if you wish. You will not survive the test. I suggest you reconsider your purpose here." The fleet commander, a veteran named, decided to probe the barrier. He sent 3 ships forward, expecting them to find weaknesses he could exploit. The ships approached the barrier, they scanned it, they prepared to fire. The barrier responded. Energy lashed out from a dozen points simultaneously. The 3 ships did not explode. They did not burn. They simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there. The next moment there was nothing, not even debris. Stared at his display in shock. He had commanded fleets for 60 years. He had seen every weapon in the galaxy. He had never seen anything like this. "What happened?" he demanded. "Where did they go?" His science officer was trembling. "The weapon operates on principles we do not understand. It appears to fold space itself. The ships were not destroyed. They were erased from existence." On Sentinel Station, allowed herself a small smile. The barrier weapon was actually fairly limited. It could only fire a few times before needing to recharge. But they did not know that. All they knew was that 3 of their ships had vanished instantly. Emperor watched from his flagship at the rear of the fleet. He had come personally to witness the destruction of Earth. Instead, he was witnessing the destruction of his own legend. Opened a direct communication channel to the Imperial vessel. Her face appeared on his private screen. "Emperor," she said calmly, We need to talk. Was shocked. No one had ever reached his private channel. It was supposed to be completely secure. How did you access this frequency? We have been listening to your communications for months, replied. We know everything. Your fleet movements, your battle plans, your private conversations with your advisors. We know about your throne room and the bones of the species you destroyed to build it. She paused, letting that sink in. We also know about the sunless ones, all the species your empire conquered and enslaved. Some of their descendants escaped. They came to Earth as refugees decades ago. They told us everything. They helped us understand your weaknesses. Felt something cold spreading through his chest. The species he had destroyed were helping his enemies. We have calculated the exact location of your, continued. We have weapons that can reach it from here. Our barrier is not just for defense. It is a launch platform. We can send projectiles across the galaxy in minutes. Your cities, your palaces, your throne room of bones. We can turn them all to dust without leaving our own system. You are bluffing, said, but his voice lacked confidence. Perhaps, acknowledged, would you like to find out? The Grand Fleet remained frozen at the edge of the barrier. Hours passed, then days, requested orders. What should they do? Attack? Retreat? The Emperor gave no answer. Inside the fleet, morale collapsed completely. Soldiers whispered to each other in fear. Some refused to obey orders. Some tried to desert. The mighty military was falling apart without a single shot being fired. Admiral watched and waited. He knew that patience was also a weapon. Finally, on the 5th day, Emperor made a decision. He opened a communication channel to Sentinel Station. What do you want? He asked, his voice tired and old. His response was simple. We want you to leave. We want you to never return. And we want a treaty that guarantees our safety forever. And if we refuse, then we will demonstrate our capabilities on your people will watch their cities burn from orbit. Your empire will learn what your victims experienced. Is that what you want? Looked around at his advisors. He looked at the tactical display showing his fleet, frozen in place, afraid to move. He looked at the barrier, glowing with power he could not understand. For 200 years, he had been the most powerful being in the galaxy. Now he was nothing more than an old creature facing an enemy he could not defeat. We will negotiate, he said finally. Admiral nodded. A wise choice. We will send our terms. I suggest you accept them quickly. Our patience is not unlimited. The communication ended. Slumped in his throne, feeling every one of his centuries weighing upon him. The humans had not just defeated his fleet. They had defeated him, and they had done it without firing a single shot in this final confrontation. That, he realized, was the most terrifying thing of all. These creatures understood war better than anyone. They knew when to fight and when to simply wait. The Empire had met its match, and the galaxy would never be the same. The negotiations took 3 months. They were held on a neutral station built specifically for this purpose, floating in the empty space between Earth and the retreating fleet. Admiral led the human delegation. Emperor did not attend personally. He had been removed from power 2 weeks after the standoff began. His own council had turned against him. They blamed him for provoking a species that should have been left alone. They blamed him for the loss of the Third Armada. They blamed him for the humiliation of the Grand Fleet, which had retreated without firing a single effective shot. After 2 centuries of rule, was cast out like garbage. The new leadership was eager to end the conflict. They understood, finally, that some enemies could not be conquered. The humans were one of them. Admiral sat across the negotiating table from the representatives. He was calm and patient. He had all the time in the world. They did not. These are our terms, he said, sliding a document across the table. They are not suggestions, they are requirements. The envoy read the document carefully. His face grew pale with each line. Earth's solar system will be designated as restricted territory. No Imperial vessel will enter within 50 light-years without explicit human permission. Any violation will be considered an act of war and will be responded to with immediate force. The envoy nodded slowly. This was expected. All species currently enslaved by the Empire will be offered a choice. They may remain under Imperial rule if they wish, or they may seek asylum in human-protected space. The Empire will not interfere with their decision. This was harder to accept. Millions of enslaved beings might choose to leave. It would cripple entire industries that depended on their labor. But the envoy nodded again. They had no choice. The Empire will provide full compensation for the attempted invasion. This will include technology transfers, star charts, and access to Imperial databases. Humanity wishes to understand the galaxy we now belong to. The envoy hesitated at this one. Giving humans access to Imperial technology was dangerous. These creatures were already terrifyingly creative. What would they become with 3 centuries of additional knowledge? But again, there was no choice. The humans had proven they could develop superior weapons on their own. Refusing this demand would only delay the inevitable. Finally, continued, Earth will establish a permanent embassy on the. This is not a gesture of friendship. This is a reminder. Our people will be there watching. If you ever consider threatening humanity again, you will see us. You will remember what happened here, and you will think twice. The envoy signed the document without further argument. The Treaty of Saul, as it came to be called, was announced to both species 3 days later. On Earth, there were celebrations in the streets. Humanity had faced an alien empire and won. They had proven that they were not weak. They had proven that they could not be conquered. Doctor watched the celebrations from the observation deck of Sentinel Station. She did not feel like celebrating. She felt tired. She had spent months preparing for this conflict, studying the enemy, finding their weaknesses. Now it was over and she was not sure how to feel. Captain Minyu Lee joined her at the window. He was a hero now, the pilot who had led the charge at the Battle of Titan. Reporters wanted to interview him. Politicians wanted to meet him. He wanted none of it. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The refugees," she replied. The sunless ones. They came to Earth with nothing. They told us about the Empire because they hoped someone would finally fight back. Now they will have the chance to rebuild their civilizations. Minyu nodded. "Do you think they will?" "Some will. Some are too broken. The Empire did terrible things to them, but at least now they have a choice. That is more than they had before." Arrived with it in her hand, she looked excited, which was unusual for her, was usually calm to the point of coldness. "We are receiving communications," she announced, "from 18 different species. They want to know if Earth is accepting applications for protection." Raised an eyebrow. Protection. Word has spread across the galaxy. The humans defeated the humans treated their prisoners with kindness. The humans forced the Empire to sign a treaty. Other species are taking notice. They want to align with us. This was unexpected. Humanity had never sought to build an empire of their own. They had fought for survival, nothing more. But now other species were looking to them for leadership. Admiral entered the observation deck. He was tired. The negotiations had drained him, but there was still work to do. "I heard about the communications," he said. 18 species want our protection." "What should we tell them?" asked. Thought about it carefully. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself many times. They had fought wars over resources, religion, ideology, and simple hatred. They had learned hard lessons about the price of conflict. They did not want to become what they had defeated. "Tell them we are open for business," he said finally. "But make one thing clear. We do not build empires. We do not conquer. We do not enslave. We are offering partnership, not domination. If they want to join us, they will be equals. If they want us to rule them, they need to look elsewhere. The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Within a year, 30 species had aligned with Earth, not as subjects but as partners. They formed a loose coalition dedicated to mutual defense and cooperation. It was called the Sol Alliance. The Empire watched these developments with concern. Their territory was stable, but expansion was no longer possible. The species they had once conquered were finding new homes in human space. Their economy was weakening. Their military was demoralized. Some wondered if they had lost something more important than territory. They had lost their belief in their own superiority. For 3 centuries, they had been the masters of the galaxy. Now they were just one power among many, forced to negotiate with a species they had once dismissed as primitive. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The secret military programs were revealed to the public. People learned about the defense fleet, the orbital platforms, the weapons that had saved them. There was shock at first. How could such things have been kept secret? But shock gave way to gratitude. The defenders had done their job. Admiral retired 2 years after the treaty was signed. He had given everything to protect his world. Now he wanted peace. He bought a small house in the mountains of Korea, far from cities and crowds. He spent his days reading, gardening, and watching the stars at night. Sometimes he thought about He did not hate them. He understood them. They had done what powerful species always did. They had taken what they wanted because no one could stop them. Humanity had simply proven that someone could. Doctor continued her research, now focused on understanding the dozens of new species that had joined the Alliance. Each one had unique biology, unique culture, unique needs. It would take generations to truly integrate them all, but she was patient. Understanding took time. Captain Minu became the commander of the expanded defense fleet. He trained new pilots from Earth and from the allied species. He taught them the tactics that had won the Battle of Titan. He taught them that adaptability was more important than strength, and he taught them that mercy was not weakness. Became the director of Galactic Intelligence. She listened to communications from across the galaxy, watching for threats and opportunities. She was very good at her job. Nothing escaped her notice. The never tested Earth's defenses again. The embassy on there was a constant reminder of their defeat. Human diplomats walked their streets, observed their society, and reported back to Earth. It was humiliating, but it was the price of peace. Decades passed. The Sol Alliance grew stronger. Old wounds slowly healed. The refugees from conquered species built new homes in human space. Some even visited as tourists, a reminder that the galaxy had changed forever. And throughout the galaxy, a simple truth became known. Earth was restricted territory. Humanity had issued its final warning, and anyone who ignored it would face the consequences. The galaxy had finally learned to listen. Some nights when Admiral looked up at the stars from his mountain home, he thought about how close everything had come to disaster. One wrong decision, one moment of weakness, one miscalculation, and humanity might have been just another set of bones in an alien throne room. But they had survived, they had adapted, they had refused to give up. That was the human way. It always had been, and it always would be. The stars twinkled in the darkness, countless and beautiful. Out there somewhere, new threats were probably emerging. New empires were probably rising. New dangers were probably approaching. But was not worried. He had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. He had seen their creativity, their stubbornness, their refusal to accept defeat. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and they would survive. They always survived.